Yes, I'm currently senior counsel at America First Legal, but I actually used to be here. I was the deputy director of public affairs at the Department of Justice during the first Trump administration. And it was when I was here at the Department of Justice that we made the decision to move our young daughters, who I think were 3 and 6 at the time, to Loudoun County, Virginia. Increase that commute, but you're going to get better schools. And in 2018, Loudoun County public schools were great schools. Well, it did not take long for that to change. The next year, the board flipped, and really all hell broke loose. And the first time I realized that there was a problem was in the summer of 2020 when I read an article about how Loudoun County Public Schools was using curriculum provided by the Southern Poverty Law Center. I took that under advisement. I decided to do some more research, and I found that Loudoun County Public Schools was essentially engaging in race-based admissions to their magnet school that they had recently started. So I wrote an article in the Federalist about it, and I went to speak at one school board meeting, and I spoke about the First Amendment. A couple of months later, in March of 2021, there was a group called the Anti-Racist Parents of Loudoun County. It was a Facebook group. We have since changed that name to Chardonnay Antifa, and you'll see why soon. And that group was determined to find all the parents that opposed school closure and mask policies and opposed the school policies related to critical race theory and equity. And what they wanted to do was expose those parents, send mailers to those parents' neighborhoods, hack their platforms, infiltrate their groups. And what made this even worse is that 6 school board members were a part of this group, as was the Soros-backed Commonwealth attorney Buddha Bibarai, who amazingly makes Steve Descano look slightly competent, which is a difficult thing to do. So as a result of this, we thought that the school board would say, we're sorry, we're going to get out of the group, that was inappropriate. No, they didn't. They turned it back around on us and said we were making things up about their equity policies. So that caused me to start an organization called Fight for Schools, and what we did was we started collecting signatures to remove these 6 school board members under state removal laws. And over the course of that summer, we gathered 25,000 signatures. But it also made us sort of the spotlight on what was going on in Loudoun County, because so much happened beyond just that list making. There was obviously what happened with Scott, which came out later. We had a teacher who went to go speak at public comment who was suspended because he opposed their policy requiring him to refer to gender-expansive kids by their preferred pronoun. It wasn't even a policy. He was just saying, I oppose this policy at public comment. Supreme Court reversed that, so that was nice. But as a result, when the news, the media needed somebody to go on TV and criticize Loudoun County Public Schools, or on the radio and criticize Loudoun County Public Schools, it was largely me, or give a quote to the Washington Post or whoever. I also attended all these school board meetings, and I had a very specific style at the school board meetings. I tried to channel my Chairman Jordan in those school board meetings when I would speak. And as a result, I became enemy number 1 of the Loudoun County School Board in 2021. They even had a list, and I was literally enemy number 1. And former Attorney General Miyares called me, and he was a little upset that he was 5 and I was 1. And it's all, it all sounded funny at the time, but then the NSBA memo came out. And what I found interesting about the NSBA memo, beyond the obvious, is that one of the school board members, who's now currently in the Virginia House of Delegates, tweeted that out pretty quickly. NSBA asks Biden administration to investigate parents for threats on school board members. Well, I remember that as being very interesting because this school board member had supposedly gotten a threat that had made its way through the news earlier in that year. And it doesn't take much detective work to really connect that threat to actually one of her allies, potentially, to create a story that could then be used for the National School Board Association to do what they did. And as Chairman Jordan said earlier, 4 days, 5 days for an Attorney General memo? I work at the Department of Justice. That doesn't happen, okay? And what that Attorney General memo did was not just direct the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's offices, but it also gave a green light, a permission slip, to these activists in the community that worked with the school boards, that worked with the Commonwealth Attorney, Buddha Bibarai, to target people, to intimidate people, to harass people, because we're the bad ones. According to the federal government, we're the bad ones. So the federal government says it's okay. We've got a friendly prosecutor. We can go after them relentlessly. They came after me relentlessly. My family was subject to a year-long online defamation campaign. I had hate mail sent to my home saying that I was a cancer to the community. I had a box of coal delivered to my door, which my daughters opened on Christmas Eve. I had mail sent to all of my neighbors saying that I was a racist and white supremacist and they should shun me. This is where my daughters play. And they did this because they wanted me to move out of Loudoun County and they wanted me to stop exercising my First Amendment rights. The most concerning thing that happened, however, was that I had my electronic dog fence. The wires were switched in there so that it would no longer work. That put not only my dogs at risk, but also my kids at risk if they tried to get a dog that was running across the street. This went on relentlessly until Buddha Bibarai lost, and they no longer had a Soros-backed prosecutor. Then it stopped because they didn't have the backing. Sure, at that point, they still had the backing of Merrick Garland, but not locally. And it sure as heck has stopped since President Trump has been in office, I'll tell you that much. But this is why parents are afraid to go out and speak. Because it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you worked, it doesn't matter who you know or how good you are at your job, they will target you. And it is a disincentive to go to a school board meeting and speak if you know this is going to result in your family being harassed or you losing a job. I've talked to so many people that want to take action, but they are afraid to do it for these very reasons. So what the federal government did, what the Garland Justice Department did, weaponization of government in and of itself is the problem. But the other problem is what it does within the community, because it gives these local elected officials the opportunity to conspire with others to intimidate and interfere with the constitutional rights of community members that they disagree with, and that needs to stop. Thank you.